man. Hello and welcome to Confused Reviews, where Cartoon Drawing reviews movies. And yeah, after the last episode where I drove around in a golf cart after my brief hiatus, I almost immediately crashed and instead just called an Uber. But it did get me thinking and reminds me to get to my very first viewer request. Longtime fan of the show, James Reimer, asked me to review Joyride way back in season 1, and if you were like me, you reacted like, what the fuck is Joyride? And one quick Amazon purchase later, I finally watched it, and it was, well, you'll find out. Joyride tells the story of Lewis and Fuller Thomas, two brothers on a cross-country adventure in a 71 Chrysler Newport to pick up Lewis's crush. After they install a CB radio, they begin fucking around with other truckers, but mess with the wrong guy, and they're thrust into a cat-and-mouse game trying to escape the gruff-voiced maniac. Now, this movie has a lot of comparisons to Steven Spielberg's very early movie, Duel, and it was actually said that J.J. Abrams took inspiration from Duel when writing Joyride. Wait a second, J.J. Abrams wrote this movie? The J.J. Abrams, who made Super 8, Star Trek, and Star Wars The Force Awakens? Well, that's promising. Pair that with the voice of Buffalo Bill and some awesome performances, and I'm really excited to tackle this movie. Oh, and the movie also had many different titles depending on what part of the world you're in, like Roadkill in Australia, Sweden, Finland, and Ireland, Never Play with Strangers in Israel and Spain, Radio Killer in Italy, Never Talk to Strangers in Greece, Road Killer in Japan, What a Ride in Russia, and Mortal Frequency in Mexico. Jeez, can you pick a fucking title? Anyways, those alternate titles range from actually being pretty cool to what the fuck kind of titles. So, with all that out of the way and a pretty good lead up, let's jump right into this movie and see if it's a new horror classic or a cheap ripoff of Spielberg's work. This is Joyride. So the film begins with an opening credit sequence that looks exactly like that anti-piracy ad on almost every DVD, and we enter a room obviously owned by a teenager, judging by the headphones and CDs, whatever the fuck this is, and hey, a toy version of the car used later in the movie. We then see Brian, Lewis, played by Paul Walker, who is talking to Venna, played by Lele Sobieski, who is talking about how she dumped her boyfriend, and Lewis, wanting some ass, volunteers to pick her up. He then snatches up a 71 Chrysler Newport and begins his journey. Man, watching Paul Walker drive down a highway in a cool car reminds me of another series he stars in. You may or may not have heard of it. The series combined has only made, $1.5 billion. You know, these movies. He makes a quick pit stop to grab a Slim Jim or something and finds out from his mom that his brother, Fuller, is in jail again. Wait, do they mean this Fuller?
Fuller, go easy on the Pepsi.
Dear God, no. He's then randomly pulled over for his taillight being out. Why mention that, you may be asking. You'll see. We then arrive to the jail to pick up Fuller, played by Steve Zahn, and their chemistry from the start is really good and seems genuine, which is great. They hit the road again, and their conversation pretty much goes down like this.
You're fucking her?
No.
Okay, you're not fucking her, but you want to.
Yes. Wait, no. Yeah. After that awkward exchange, they pull into a truck stop so Lewis can make a phone call to his not yet, but will be by the end of the flick, girlfriend. While that's going on, Fuller has a CB radio installed, cause the plot ain't gonna start itself. They continue their journey, and we hear the first words of our antagonist, Rusty Nail, voiced by the legendary Ted Levine.
Candy cane, come on.
Also, notice how the signal is green. I know it seems stupid now, but trust me, it has significance later. They try to get him into partaking into weird CB cyber sex, but they lose the signal and head to a motel. This one dickhead is yelling to the worker there, and just as that's going on, Rusty Nail returns. Notice how the bar color is now yellow. Spooky. They then hatch a master plan. Have the creeper on the radio show up to their motel to get a look at him, but send him to this prick's room instead.
I'm not sure that I'd be what you'd expect.
Well, yeah, you're kinda right.
Who do you fuck with? I fuck with.
Oh, and there's this weird, maybe kind of editing error where Fuller says the same exact thing twice.
Come on, that guy sucks, okay? He totally body checked me on the way out. That guy sucks, okay? He totally body checked me on the way out.
Weird. They have some banter for a while until the man of the hour arrives at the hotel. The two listen intently while the same douchebag from earlier argues about people showing up to his room. It then sounds like that guy got choked out, but Fuller is quick to dismiss a creepy trucker possibly hurting someone. Crazy assumption, I know, and Lewis calls the front desk, and therefore the motel staff rings up the room next door. Gee, I wonder if the shitty motel staff will do anything at all and instead just act like everything's cool.
The guy said everything's fine. What'd I tell you?
Yep, they're totally fucked. The next morning, we find out my hypothesis was correct, because we find out from Officer Adkins, played by Michael McCleary, that he got his fucking jaw ripped off. Yeah, it turns out Rusty Nail has Jason's super strength. Okay, not really, but it sounds cooler if he actually had that kind of strength. Sheriff Ritter, played by Jim Beaver, rips the brothers a new one for being a bunch of dumbasses fucking with Rusty Nail and that they apparently have no idea who Rusty Nail really is. Which is stupid, cause I highly doubt this is the first vicious encounter, and he's got a pretty distinct voice, but whatever.
I'm just trying to figure out how I'm gonna drive away from this place after what we've done.
Well, inside of the car, I'd hope. Anyways, the two hightail it out of there, and shockingly enough, are reacquainted with Clean Screw. Wait, that's not right.
You need to find a highly qualified psychiatrist.
I could recommend one, and at least with Rusty Nail, Loomis wouldn't be shocked to know that he can drive this time. He asks for an apology, and Fuller, in layman's terms, basically tells him to go fuck himself, and Rusty Nail retaliates with this.
You're no black sheep. You really ought to get that fixed.
Get what fixed?
Your tail light.
Oh shit. And the classic out of gas cliche is used full force, and they quickly get off the road and end up in a dimly lit gas station. This can only end wonderfully, I predict. An ice truck pulls in, and in a really tense scene, the two quickly speed off and soon end up on a dead-end road with the mysterious ice truck not too far behind. Hey, at least this truck doesn't have a stupid fucking goblin face like in Maximum Overdrive. Turns out it was all a fake out, and the guy was just a nice guy returning Lewis's credit card that he left behind. Whew, glad that was all one big... Oh, fuck! So yeah, it turns out Rusty Nail ain't giving up that easily because they soon embark on a crazy chase scene where they end up crashing sideways into a tree. Good job. And in one of the best scenes in the movie, they slowly begin to get crushed between the truck and the tree, and Steve Zahn is phenomenal in this scene. He's freaked out and reacts like any normal person would. It's a great scene. After Fuller pleads to him that it was all for a laugh, he backs off, and just when you think it's all okay, it is, and cuts to the next day. I didn't expect that. There wasn't one pointless car explosion or one jump scare that makes you want to rip your hair out. They finally get Venna, and Fuller perfectly represents everyone in the audience during the scene. Bored as fuck. They have a rather pointless scene which leads into a driving montage, and it's funny because next to them on the highway, Harry and Lloyd are driving to Aspen. What a weird cameo. Anyways, they head to a bar, and it's a really good scene of them having fun when some dickheads start messing with Venna.
How about colored peaches? You like peaches?
No, not really.
Yeah, fuck peaches. Wait, what? Lewis tries being a hero, but thankfully, Fuller swoops in to fix the situation.
Bitch, shut up! Are you mouthing off again? Back on track with you, Daisy! Don't get in the fork! Now come on! God damn!
He's honestly the best thing in this movie. They drop Venna off at her room, and Fuller does the same thing most normal people do. Rents some porn and asks his passed out brother if his crush is his crush or not. Oh, and just when you think everything's fine and you let your guard down...
Hello?
No, I thought you said there was no girl.
What?
Fuck. That scared me. He rushes to her room and...
And then he asks what you're doing in the other room with her, which you know is a pretty fucking excellent question.
Okay, we're getting out of here.
does bring up a good point. Anyways, they run out of the room and get scared by Walter's subcheck here, and gets the fuck out of Dodge. Lewis and Venna start arguing when Fuller notices a message left behind by the unseen serial killer.
He wants us to look in the trunk.
Actually, he's looking for whatever a rest area trunk is, but whatever. But what could be in the trunk? A demon? A body? Freddy Krueger? A DVD copy of Fast and Furious 9? What is it? Oh, it was just the CB.
Right.
Oh, and the CB color changed again to a darker yellow, which again is foreshadowing the shitstorm headed our character's way. He describes what happens when someone's jaw gets cut off, and it sounds familiar.
They cut
Oh, so that's where you get Nutella from. It all makes sense. Yeah, and apparently Rusty Nail captured this one chick who got like 30 seconds of screen time earlier and tells them where to go, and if they don't comply, well...
She's dead.
And just for shits and giggles, he has the two go into a diner naked. That creepiness happens for about 30 seconds, and they hit the road again. What? We then wind up on the set of Children of the Corn, and Mac here chases after them. And in one of the weirdest scenarios I've ever described, the three run away in a cornfield from a crazed truck driver playing a game of cat and mouse with them whilst never leaving his truck and somehow not getting stuck or losing any of his intimidation factor while doing it. Crazy shit, man. Eventually, all three of them get split up, and he actually leaves his truck, so that's something. Anyways, Venna gets captured by the Rust Man because she's the girl of the group, and he leaves. The two brothers then start arguing again when they hear Venna screaming.
Venna! Venna, come at me!
What? There is no way that dinky radio could create sound loud enough to be heard clearly halfway across a fucking cornfield. The car then blows up.
Cool guys don't look at explosions.
And they have a hilarious scene of them trying to hotwire a truck while some guy genuinely tries to help them.
Where the hell are you going? That's my truck!
No. Was your truck. They make it to a motel and...
I said hold on!
Oh, hey Hank. Bye Hank. There's my office joke for the episode. They search every room except for the right one, cause we gotta let Rusty Nail finish his traps, and we see that he looks like the NES cover for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and as we see the two arrive to the right room, you can see this contraption is set up so that if they open the door, well, she'll end up like Bob from the Hateful Eight. Well, it turns out she's in the room next to the one Rusty Nails told them to go to, so they look around for a bit until he calls them and explains how he's doing the exact same thing they did to him at the last motel, listening through the walls while bad shit goes on in the next room. Fuller then hatches a plan to go to the back of the motel and sneak in through the back, and Lewis is trying to distract them while Venna is trying to escape and Rusty Nails is just having fun. Holy hell, there's a lot going on at once. Anyways, Fuller's plan wasn't executed all that well because he's grabbed by Rusty, and in this very suspenseful, nail-biting scene, Lewis goes to open the door and... Thankfully, Fuller saves Venna.
Don't open the door! Don't open the door!
But he kinda gets his leg all fucked up. Oh, and because this is a horror movie, the police show up at the worst possible time. And as that's going on, Lewis tries desperately to get Fuller off the thing before Rusty slams into him with his truck. The suspense in this scene is fantastic. I'm scared shitless, and I already know what happens. Lewis saves the ditzy dipshit love interest, but they still have to save the best part of this movie. The cops then go all Grand Theft Auto on the truck, but it doesn't help. But thankfully, Lewis saves Fuller. But he couldn't save the motel room. I feel bad for the maid who was in the room next to it.
What the hell are you doing?
But when they go to investigate the truck, it's fake out time. They find the kidnapped girl and another body, but they don't show its face, and Lewis's reaction is that of seeing someone that he recognized. So let me explain. Earlier in the movie, when the ICE truck driver returns his credit card, Rusty Nail plows through his truck, which must have killed him. So Rusty planted his body in his truck, and then escaped while it drove into the building. Now, it took me a couple of watches to realize that, so you're welcome. So we've reached the end of the film, and...
Come on.
Rusty Nail ain't as dead as they thought.
Washes everything clean.
Uh-oh. Fun fact, there are 4 alternate endings to the film. The original ending, which is a 29-minute huge alteration to the movie where Rusty Nails is killed in his truck in a big explosion. Another where he gets crushed by his own truck, and another where Rusty Nail stands by the shotgun when the cops come in and he gets his head blown off, and the worst one where Venna saves the day. I like the 29-minute alternate ending, and I also like the one where Rusty Nail gets crushed by his own truck, and I would have used that one in the theatrical cut. Because to me, it's ironic that the one thing Rusty had against them was his truck, and it ended up being the reason to his demise. But we gotta keep the possibility for sequels. You know, that reminds me, I haven't seen the Joyride sequels. I wonder if they're worth taking a look at. Wait a second, what's this video file? for that drawing guy who reviews things.
Hey Luke, Fedora here, and a good review on Joyride.
Aw, well, thanks.
Now, pull into that truck stop and slam on the brakes, because nothing good comes after this.
Why? What's so bad about the sequels?
Joyride 2 is an annoying experience in softcore torture porn, and Joyride 3 is inconsistent at best, and boring and fucking confusing at worst.
Well, that's all the motivation I need not to look at them right now. So thanks, Fedora, for looking out for my safety and sanity. Anyways, that was Joyride, and it is great. For one, the one thing that makes this better than a lot of horror movies are the performances. Paul Walker is pretty good, and as you know, Steve Zahn is fantastic, and actually gives a great performance. His role alone makes this movie worth at least 3 watches. The storyline, while not wholly original, is handled and executed very well. It's very suspenseful, and is one of the only movies I can say genuinely made me nervous. The villain, being unseen but still very terrifying, is one of the movie's highest strengths. It's not just some guy in a mask killing people or some monster. It's just a crazed guy who is really good at killing people. He also has a terrifying voice, and it obviously wasn't a coincidence that he does, and it fits the character perfectly. There honestly isn't much wrong with this movie. It wasn't difficult to sit through, and I was invested almost the entire time. Besides a few cliched moments, the only part of the movie I could say that I didn't like was Venna. Her character in itself wasn't all that bad, because you gotta have a love interest or whatever, but the actress playing her is kind of terrible, and delivers all of her lines monotone as fuck. Thankfully, she isn't in it as much as the brothers, and even in the finale, she's tied up and doesn't talk much. So at least she isn't like Tina in Halloween 5 and talks a lot. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie, and is what I would consider to be a modern horror classic, alongside Jeepers Creepers and Saw. I'm really glad I was asked to take a look at this movie, cause it's really worth it, and I highly recommend this movie to horror fans and fans of thrillers. With some great performances and a shit ton of tension, I wouldn't feel right giving Joyride anything lower than an A-. Because it's great in almost every way, but some overused cliches and one awful performance are here and show. But it is still fantastic. I couldn't recommend this movie more, and with that, I'm Confused Reviews. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.